What's up, Zox fam? We're back with some more Chaos Zero Nightmare. Now, I think it is about time that we lay down some foundationary things because I really want to make sure that you guys are fully prepared for the official release. And I want to go through everything that I've learned so far so that you guys can better prepare yourself for everything that's going to come. Now, I want to actually start out with some of the baseline or some of the basic things that you absolutely need to know to be successful in this game. Because the thing is that this game is not just about going in, you pick a character and you just ooga booga. You really do have to start being mindful of a whole slew of things. And one of the very first things that you have to start being mindful of is going to be your classes and, of course, attributes. Now, as far as classes that you have in the game, you have Striker, Vanguard, Ranger, Hunter, Psionic, and Controller. These are all going to be a different type of class that has a different means of how they contribute to the fight, right? Some might be balanced in offense defense like the Striker, or you might have like the Vanguard who's a little bit more focused on protecting your allies. So these are going to be varying things that you'll be considering when trying to decide what units you may want to combine with others. And then of course, it all ties into the attribute. So the attributes that we have is Passion, Void, Instinct, Order, and Justice. And with all of these attributes, one of the biggest takeaways that I could at least give you guys is that different pieces of content require different attributes, right? And these are going to be really important to take advantage of the weakness attacks or the weakness effect that enemies are going to basically have. And those are usually presented right up under their HP bar. But there's also a bar right next to that attribute that basically is what we would call a break bar. And if you're not hitting that break bar, it's actually going to be putting you in a scenario where you're not really taking advantage of optimizing how much potential chances that you have to deal damage to the boss. And so the easiest way to be able to break that bar or that tenacity damage that ends up coming into play is when you're hitting with attribute advantage damage. And so some of the issues that you may run into simply might just be that you don't have the respective damage or attribute type to really handle that specific wave or fight really well. So then it starts resorting into brute forcing, which is a whole nother conversation. But just to give it, a simple meaning here, attributes, classes are the baseline that's really going to be extremely important for your initial start and understanding. Now, moving along, we have the team formation screen. Now, this is not only going to be displaying your 3 combatants that you're bringing into combat, but it's also going to be displaying the 3 partners, so 1 for each combatant that's also going to be traversing with them. So in total, in reality, you actually have 6 characters that are always going into combat with you, but playing different roles. And we're going to actually touch back on the partners in another minute, right? So give me a second. Now, when we're actually talking about what's on this screen, you also have the ability to set and create presets. This is obviously going to be really important because this is going to allow you to be able to swap your teams, to be able to face different challenges, and even just playing some of your different or favorite comps that you have come up with. Now, the other thing that's really important to note on this screen as well is that you can directly change your save data. Now, for those that aren't familiar or weren't paying attention to what save data is usually shown or presented right here via this, 16,200 terabytes. But your save data is ultimately previous clears that you've done in other dungeons where you have been able to expand more on your cards, hitting more epiphanies, and obtaining random gear. And in some cases, it may be rare gear like this that's going to just make your unit that much stronger. And what you're able to do with save data is you're able to take that save data, equip it, and bring it into other fights. This is going to be one of the ways that you're able to power up your character so that they're able to perform right away with a set of cards at their disposal that's going to allow them to get rid of their stronger enemies in front of them much quicker. So this is one of the lifelines of what makes this game so fun, is that you're constantly going to be getting different save datas and different decks that you can basically try to build. There's some RNG in them, but if you have a really successful run, that could be a really insane build for one of the characters or your entire party that you're bringing through that specific dungeon. So this is a really, really important component to note and to really understand. And if you like a specific thing, like say for the save data, you can always favorite it, rename it, and just making sure that, you're not getting rid of it. You can also lock it as well if you want to. So that's just how you go about, making sure that you keep your save data. It saves basically all of your stuff here based off of the scores. And then over time, if you don't like something, you can just dismantle it or get rid of it so that you don't have to worry about using that if it's like a trash build. So there's so many different ways that you can kind of approach that, right? Now, the other thing that's really important about this screen too is that you're also going to have the ability to see what cards you have at your disposal via the ones that are highlighted, and the ones that are grayed out are going to also be indicated cards that you need to hit epiphanies to be able to unlock those effects. These effects are going to be leading you into different occurrences, which are going to then lead you into special epiphanies that will evolve the card even further. There's so many different things that can happen within a given fight depending on the cards that you get. So this is why the more fights that you're able to go through and the more opportunities you have to use certain cards, every time you see a light bulb above your character's head, that's basically an opportunity for you to activate a new effect on a card. It could be something as far as like making the card cost nothing, or adding an additional effect, or even doubling the effect of what that card currently does. So there's so many different things that comes with this that honestly makes combat that much smoother. So epiphanies are very, very important, and there are things that as soon as you see that light bulb going on your head, you want to make sure that you're activating a card and the specific card that that character is requiring in order to get that epiphany activation. Now, of course, there are some other things that I would like to highlight real quick, just as food for thought. There is a system via the Arc City, and I'm going to touch back on this in another video, but you are able to redo or undo some of the things or decisions that you've done in a fight. So if you made a mistake or you're getting to the point where you realize you lose, the more that your Arc City is developed, you can actually start going all the way back to the fight and retrying and trying a different strategy and redoing what cards you may have used over others to see if you're able to re-clear it in a different format. And then also with the rolling of the dice, if you run into a situation where you don't actually hit the quantity number that's asking for, you can basically use the system to be able to re-roll it to give yourself a second chance, essentially, right? And then the very last thing that I think is really important to note here is the fact that you can equip food, okay? And more or less actually eat food. So there is a part in the Arc City where you can actually eat food, and I mean literally watch yourself eat it. And what it does is it gives you an effect. So like, for example, I have the Ocean Breeze Sushi set. So it's plus 7% attack for all combatants, and this will be applied entry to 2 Chaos dungeons, right? Or into Chaos 2 times. So just kind of keeping in mind that that's a system that you're able to take advantage of. Yes, you do have to buy it, but it's with a very obtainable currency. So very, very, very important information just alone on this screen that I hope you guys are able to retain. Okay, guys, so here we are in combat. And combat has a lot of different layers, especially when we're talking about from the map transitioning into the actual fight itself. Now, starting off with the map itself, you can always blow the map up to see what nodes you have accessible. Now, why is this important? Well, because you could actually create a game plan on which pathways that you want to go on based off of what lies ahead. So like, for example, here, we're basically right here at the very beginning, but I know that in order for me to get to this next bonfire or campfire, I have to go through 2 different fights, a mystery panel, and then I'll be able to hit that, right? Now, of course, I might want to look a little bit ahead of this and say, well, okay, do I want to deal with this elite battle area, or do I want to just keep it, and play it safe where I'm just going for normal battles so I can actually clear this and get through this without actually building up too much trauma? And this is one of the things that you have to kind of factor. Is your account or your team ready to take on more obstacles like that? Or are you just really setting yourself up for failure so that now you're just dying basically every time you get about to the halfway mark, right? So these are just the things that you just have to kind of consider. So the game planning starts from the very beginning. Now, when we're actually getting into combat itself, let's actually get into it. Now, there's a lot of different things on the screen, and I want to try to simplify this as much as possible because I know sometimes when the game plays, it can be overwhelming trying to read everything and really fully understanding what's happening. So let's actually talk about it, right? Now, over here, what you have are cards to draw. And if you guys are familiar with like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or you played any sort of card game, you kind of can get this construct or concept, right? So you have cards to draw, you have a graveyard, and you have exhausted cards, okay? So cards to draw are obviously cards you have not used yet. And then, of course, your graveyard are cards that you have used. You're going to have a slew of different cards that will have different effects. And with those cards, it may say things like, for example, use this card and we'll remove or bring this specific card out of the graveyard, or use this card and it will exhaust these cards, right? So there's a lot of things that kind of goes into that, but for face value, just understanding that those are basically your deck piles, right? Now, the other thing is too, if you want to ever check what's going on in combat, there is a combat log, and this is actually really important because this will also show you what effects have been in play, what might be happening throughout the duration of the fight. So you're always able to check that as well. Now, the other thing too that's really important to note is you have something over here called EP that's building up. Now, why is EP important? Because EP is going to be something that is allowing you to summon your partners into battle, right? So right here, you can see that we have our giant bazooka partner that's attached, that's going to be able to deal 139% damage to all enemies. Now, this plays hand in hand with your cards that you're also using. Like if you say, for example, want this to scale, I may want to proc a card that's dealing with vulnerability damage. So I might wait to do that, right? Now, the other thing is too, is that the cards that are laid out here obviously are being used by the main combatants, and you also have an AP cost or number that you basically can start out each wave with, which is going to be what you're utilizing when you're using cards. And each card obviously costs something. So like, for example, if I want to use the downward cut like that, that's costing me 1 point, right? So you're going to basically be trying to always exhaust those points in a realistic or reasonable manner so that you can actually, like I said, take the most advantage of your turn, right? So here we don't really have too many other cards that we really want to use. So you can decide from here, I don't want to do anything. And so I'll show you what happens when you decide you don't want to use the rest of those cards. You'll see they all go over into the graveyard or discard pile. So whatever cards you don't use actually go over here. And this is really important to note because this could be a way for you to play into a strategy of cards that you can pull on or call on later when you actually need them. Versus, like, again, we don't have any cards that have exhausted yet, but if you have any cards that exhaust, that's something that you'll also be able to pay attention to too. All right. So with that being the case, EP also builds up each turn that you get. So with that, you'll be able to, after X amount of turns, be able to use the highest cost, which that can be an ult from a character. That can be the partner coming in to do an assist attack or assist support. So EP affects those two different things, mind you, right? So like, for example, here we have a card that's going to give us a heal and also an extra action point. So we're going to go for that. Here we get an extra attack on our next card. But I don't actually have another card to attack with, so it's all right. We just wasted it. But that's fine, because that actually goes into our discard pile, and we might get a card that allows us to kind of show how that works. All right, cool. And then we end our turn. All right, so here we go. Now we can actually use it. So we got it back. Boom. And then now we get an extra hit. But just to add insult to injury, we're going to just summon our partner here. Boom. Right? And we're also hitting with the advantages. You can usually tell because it will light up to tell you like, hey, you're hitting with a passion attribute character. So that's going to break this enemy quicker, but he's also dead too. So it doesn't really matter too much. There you go. And that's GG, right? So after each fight, you'll be able to actually obtain, you know, some sort of rewards from equipment to credits, etc. Right? Very, very straightforward in how this works. And then you're able to move on to the very next thing. Now, like I would say, if you want to keep it simple, obviously go for some regular nodes or normal battles. But if you want to take a chance and maybe try to see your luck, and if you can get a better drop, then go for those elite bosses. Now that we've gone over combat, I wanted to take a step back to actually take a little bit more of an in-depth look at the character screen. Now here you're able to see your stats, but not only are you able to see your stats, but you're also able to promote or level your characters. Now, if we're talking about leveling a character, let's look at Magna, for example. Leveling up is going to require this resource here, which is the advanced battle memory or just battle memory in general, right? Basic battle memory. This is going to be your EXP in the game. Now, this is going to also be a really important resource to keep in the back of your head. It's going to be units, right? Now, units is what I would consider to be like equivalent value in this game as gold. And it's basically used for everything. Like Honestly, like literally everything from leveling your character to the promotion to working on your arc city to buying food in the city. Like it's used for everything, right? So definitely a really, really important resource. On top of that, if you are looking at the promotion is going to require a resource here called manuals. So it will vary based off of what uncapping you've already done. So you use basic psionic manuals like from level 10 to 20. Now we're on advanced psionic manuals from 20 to 30, etc., right? So it's very, very straightforward in how this works. Now, if we're actually going back and we're looking again, just recapping that you also have your saved data that's here. So you can always click that, change that out, and just have it preset if you choose to do so. But that's basically what you have here. I'm gonna touch on some other things in another video because it goes into a more resource management thing. But with that, the next thing you also have here are obviously your cards, right? So of course with your cards, you can see here what your ego skill is, your starting cards, your unique cards, your restoration. Like, so for example, consume prism modules to restore the time recorded on the card. There is a specific banner for that, which it's going to require this like prism module. That's how you get the prism effects on cards. I think that that's something that like for sure some people are going to want to do right away. It really is one of those things that I'm still kind of going through and seeing like how important this is, but it is a feature that does have its own banner or gotcha for it. So we'll touch on that in another video. Now, what we also have too is obviously, like I mentioned before, the partners. As promised, we're back to touch on them. This is going to be another foundation thing that's really important because not only are partners bringing additional effects, but what they also are doing are bringing you additional base stats, right? So not only, like for example, it says the combatant's attack card damage increases by 10% when the combatants first exhaust a card or first gains a status element card, their attack card damage increases by 12% for the first turn. So this is really important to note because not only are you getting this additional effect, base stats, but you can also level up your partner just like you're leveling up your combatant. So the combatant can, like I said, obviously be the face of the battle, but the partners are just as important because they're basically the other portion of stats to that character and what's going to enable them to be much stronger base stat wise, right? So as you can see, attack, defense, and health, all flat base stats, right? Now, of course, with that, like I said, we got our saved data, which is its own separate tab. But another thing we have not touched on yet is potential. Potential is also going to be a really important thing because potential is going to be allowing you to be able to unlock different effects for your cards, and not only different effects for your cards, but also different stats. So I know I have some resource here for this character. So we're going to actually go and activate, right? And so it says when the first applied epiphany occurs, you can select a card. Why is that important? Because it's not random. That means that I can actually pick which epiphany I'm actually getting, or actually evolving into. And this is actually going to give me a little bit more control in my deck building. This is why this is important. There's so much stuff I was finding out, guys. I was like, this is insane, right? So little effects like that. Mind you, there's an entire resource dungeon that you can grind that. But there also are going to be resources called potential discs. And potential discs are going to be a resource that will allow you to be able to use them as place fillers for like you not having enough of that raw resource. So like, for example, you typically would need, right, to have the growth stones in order to fulfill one of these panels or circles or nodes. But if you are running short on that resource and you have potential discs can basically replace the growth stone to be able to fulfill that requirement, right? Now, it also has here that basic card damage, shield gain and healing amount plus 2%. So we're going to go ahead and unlock that. Right. And as you can see, like I said, it all is requiring this units, which is going to be a huge, huge component for you to be able to further invest and take things up. Now, the other thing to also note with potentials is that potentials have levels. So they're not just unlock one node and then move on. You have some that are like that, but more than likely, they're going to have a certain amount of levels. Like, for example, if you want to get to this one, you have to actually level this one up and it has to be leveled 10 times, right? So then you'll be able to actually get to the next card and so on and so forth, right? So it is definitely going to be a investment grind. And this is one of the things that you're just able to kind of do as you're getting into harder content. You'll see the resources start to change. and they're going to also go up in price, right? So it is going to be a grind to get these characters up, which is also an indicator that you got to make really strong decisions on who you may want to start out investing in, and really making sure that you're getting those characters invested properly so you can actually tackle that in-game content, right? So outside of that, the very last thing is the duping system, right? We're going to have a whole separate video that actually talks a little bit more in depth about gacha itself, but you have the manifest ego. Okay. Manifest ego is obviously what you do with your duplicates, and the value that you get from them is actually kind of nice. I will say, like, for example, we have one right here that's going to be granting us a decreased cost of the Cursed Gorge cards by 1. Obviously, that's huge because now that cost is being reduced, which means we get to use other cards more. But as you look at each dupe, it's going to be some extra effect that either enhances the battle cards, enhances the unit themselves, or the effects that those cards are going to have, right? So duping in this game, I think, is going to be nice, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be required in order for you to get through content. I still think that, like, your potential, the the epiphanies, the runs themselves are still going to matter a ton, but these extra effects are definitely not going to be something that you just like turn a blind eye to, because it's just going to make your builds more seamless or even work even better because it's giving them even more enhanced effects. Now, the last thing that I want to focus on here is the Arc City. The Arc City is definitely going to be an extremely important component to your account development, and is ultimately going to be making it to where you're able to have a much better experience going through some of these chaos like worlds and stuff like that, right? Now, I want to go through a couple of these different things that are going to help you out tremendously. And it's going to be starting out in the policy office. Now, the policy office is going to have different policies that you'll be able to review. And depending on the decisions that you make with these policies, is going to be increasing and or decreasing things such as happiness, administrative index, economic activity, and also public order index. These are all things that you want to eventually get to what I would call kind of your general baseline, where that productivity of each thing is going to basically increase the production value of specific things. So, for example, if you're able to have, like, for example, your happiness higher, it's going to allow affinity gain to be much higher, which is basically the friendship that you're actually building with your characters. Or if, like, your administrative index is higher, it's going to allow you to be able to have an increased interval between your policy recruitments. And so there's a lot that kind of goes into why you want these things to be at the higher values if you can help it, because if they're not, there's actually going to be a caution. Like, for example, take, for example, the economic activity. If the economic activity is 20 or lower, the cost of using an Epiphany Center increases by 100%. So there are penalties for not upkeeping your Arc City. And we're going to get into, like, things like what the Epiphany Center is, but that's a really important thing to note. But again, you are managing an actual city, and you really have to pay attention to it as such and really taking care of it, right? And I think on regular, you get about 3 of these that you're able to take advantage of daily. So base foundation thing that you need to know, because this unlocks fairly early in your progression. Now, another thing that's also really important too is that each of the places are going to have different characters located on the main street. Here you can see we have people at the vacation spot. We have people over here in the academy. And you just take the time and you talk to these characters. Now, there's a couple of different things that you can do. And it's going to also increase the stats. That's why I want to talk about this, because it's going to also increase the stats of your characters, right? So we actually go back to an area I already did, which was at the vacation spot. We actually interacted with Magna. And what we were able to do was increasing her affinity to 8. But what this also gave me was additional base stats, right? So that's something that's going to be really important when you're trying to get, like, more value out of the character, is building up affinity, because it does affect their stats. You're also going to be able to have different story interactions, which gives you more resources and stuff like that. But we'll talk about that in another video. As far as gifts and stuff like that, you can get these gifts from, like, the coffee shop, going all the way up. Like, now I can go up to 10 if I want to. But all in all, through and through, it's very, very straightforward on what that does, right? Now, if we actually go back here to the next place, which is the Starshine Diner. The Starshine Diner is where you're going to be able to get your food. I mentioned that you can see that in the team formation screen. You're actually able to go from the team formation screen straight into here, make an order, right? Purchase whatever it is you want. So let's say we want everybody's health juiced up, right? Let's go ahead and eat this. It's going to take away my previous food, right? And then as I click, I actually get to eat the food, right? So it is definitely a really interesting, like, extra additive that the game has, but it is something that is something you probably want to do before every single fight so that you're able to get the most, like, buff potential that you can get, right? We also have the Garden Cafe, which the Garden Cafe is going to be where you're able to get more stamina every day. I already ordered mines, but just note that there is going to be this order button. You hit it, it will say free, and it'll be like 80 stamina that you can claim every day, if I'm not mistaken. So make sure you claim that as well. And that, of course, is just going to give you more chances to clear more content. Now, another really important thing we have here is the Epiphany Center. The Epiphany Center is very, very important because here you can actually go through psychotherapy. Psychotherapy is the way that you're going to be able to get rid of trauma that you've developed if, like, a character ends up having a mental break. This is where you'll be able to actually take care of it. Now, there's a couple of different things that you can do. Now, it's kind of like depending on the choice that you make, but you can actually have counseling, or you can pay a certain fee for immediate recovery. If you want counseling, counseling will start to build their mental up over time. So, like, for example, my mental on one of my characters is at like 80 right now because of counseling. But if you delete the memories, it like clean slates the character and it can go right back into content. That's something that you have to pay units for, but it is a feature. Like, for example, I can show you maybe here what I've done. Or actually it doesn't record everything, but at least it's showing that I did do it, right? So that's something that you also have at your disposal. And like I said, if your economy is not doing well, then they start charging you more when you're doing this, right? And the deeper you get into the game, the more expensive that's going to be too. So just kind of keep that in mind. The research facility, right? This is obviously really important because this is going to allow you to unlock more of those functions, like being able to re-roll your skills, etc., re-rolling the dice, being able to increase the number of policies that you can have up to 4, gaining more affinities, etc. Like, there's so many different things that you get from here. If you play games like Arc Knights, you will probably be very, very familiar with systems like this, right? I know at least I am. And then the very last thing here is going to be the No-No Shop. And the No-No Shop is actually going to be allowing you to buy things on a weekly, monthly, and then, of course, a daily basis. You'll have a few different things, like, for example, credits here that you can buy daily, but EXP, more units. You can buy level 1, level 2 policies, special policies. And of course, these policies are going to be, obviously giving you more value in terms of the boosting to the specifics of, like, for example, your current grade or what's going to build up your grade from happiness, administrator index, economic activity, and public order index. The thing with this, though, is that there's always give and take. You might have some that are positive and maybe give you like a singular thing that's super boosted, but there's always some give and take. So you got to mix what policies you're signing so that you're able to effectively build this up, right? So that's basically everything in a nutshell, fundamentally, that I feel like you guys need to know, especially when we're talking about combat and things that are going to heavily affect that experience. So I hope that this video was able to help you guys in a tremendous way. In the next few videos, we're going to actually be getting into resources, the gacha, and a whole bunch of secret things that you may not have figured out yet. So with that, make sure that you guys like and subscribe for more content like this on Chaos Zero Nightmare. I'll catch you guys later. Hope you have a blessed day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.